Long ago, in the kingdom of Persia, there lived a young Jewish woman named Esther. She lived with her cousin Mordecai, who had raised her like his own daughter. Esther was kind, beautiful, and loved by everyone who knew her. But she had no idea that she was destined for greatness and that one day she would save her people. At that time, the king of Persia was King Xerxes, a powerful but impulsive ruler. One day, he decided to find a new queen. He held a grand search, inviting the most beautiful women in the land to his palace. When the king saw Esther, he was struck by her beauty and grace, and soon after, he made her his queen. But no one in the palace knew that Esther was Jewish, because Mordecai had advised her to keep it a secret. Life in the palace seemed peaceful at first, but trouble was brewing. King Xerxes had a high-ranking official named Haman. Haman was very proud and demanded that everyone bow to him whenever he passed by. But Mordecai, being a devout Jew, refused to bow to anyone except God. This made Haman furious. In his anger, Haman came up with a terrible plan. He convinced the king to issue a decree ordering the destruction of all the Jewish people in Persia. The date was set, and letters were sent out to every province, announcing the doom of the Jews. When Mordecai heard about this, he was devastated. He sent a message to Queen Esther, urging her to go to the king and beg him to save their people. But Esther was afraid. In those days, no one, not even the queen, could approach the king without being summoned. If she did, she could be sentenced to death unless the king extended his golden scepter to her. Mordecai's message to Esther was clear. Do not think that because you are in the king's palace, you will escape this fate. Who knows? Perhaps you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. With those words echoing in her heart, Esther knew what she had to do. She called for all the Jews in the city to fast and pray for 3 days. After that, she would risk her life by going to the king. On the third day, Esther dressed in her royal robes and approached the king's throne. As she walked into the room, her heart raced. Would the king be angry? Would he send her away? But when King Xerxes saw Esther, his face softened, and he extended his golden scepter to her, sparing her life. "What is it, Queen Esther?" he asked. "What do you wish for? I will give you up to half of my kingdom." Esther didn't immediately reveal her request. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet. Curious, the king agreed. At the banquet, Esther invited them to another feast the next day. Haman, pleased by the attention, left the banquet in high spirits. But his happiness quickly turned to anger when he saw Mordecai still refusing to bow to him. That night, Haman built a tall gallows, planning to ask the king for Mordecai's execution the next morning. But something unexpected happened. The king couldn't sleep, so he asked his servants to read the royal records to him. As they read, the king discovered that Mordecai had once saved his life by uncovering a plot against him, but he had never been rewarded. The next morning, when Haman came to ask for Mordecai's execution, the king interrupted him. "What should be done for the man the king wants to honor?" the king asked. Thinking the king meant him, Haman suggested a royal parade, with the honored man dressed in the king's robes and riding the king's horse. To Haman's shock, the king said, "Go at once. Do this for Mordecai the Jew." Haman had no choice but to obey. He led Mordecai through the streets in the parade he had imagined for himself, humiliated and furious. That evening, at Esther's second banquet, the king asked again, "What is your request, Queen Esther?" This time, Esther revealed everything. "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, spare my life and the lives of my people. We are to be destroyed by the wicked Haman." The king was enraged. He ordered Haman to be executed on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai and issued a new decree allowing the Jews to defend themselves from their enemies. The Jewish people were saved, and Mordecai was promoted to a high position in the king's court. Esther's courage, wisdom, and faith had saved her people, and her story continues to inspire us today. She risked everything to do what was right, showing us that sometimes we are called to act bravely for the good of others, even when it's difficult or frightening. Moral of the story: Esther's bravery reminds us that we all have a purpose and that standing up for what is right can change the course of history. Sometimes, we are placed in certain situations for such a time as this to make a difference in the lives of others.